This is class number 7 of Answer to Job, and it covers paragraphs 649 through 661. I have 7 items tonight that I want to comment on. Item number 1 is found in paragraph 650, where we read, Satan's comparative ineffectiveness can be explained on the one hand by the careful preparations for the divine birth, and on the other hand by a curious metaphysical phenomenon which Christ witnessed. He saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. In this vision, a metaphysical event has become temporal. It indicates the historic, and so far as we know, final separation of Yahweh from his dark son. Satan is banished from heaven. And then a little farther down, he continues, although he is banished from the heavenly court, he has kept his dominion over the sublunary world. That means the earth. He's not cast directly into hell, but upon earth. What I'm concerned with here is the image of a spiritual or angelic being falling out of heaven down to earth. This is a fundamental image that one finds scattered in various places in the scriptures, and we refer to a few examples of it. And it comes up in dreams, so it's an image that you should be thoroughly familiar with. You see, it has a twofold meaning so far as the specific image of Satan being banished from heaven and falling to earth. It has a double reference. First of all, it refers to what, as Jung says, to a decisive separatio within the Godhead, so that the Yahwistic and the Satanic aspects of the Godhead are sundered. Satan's kicked out of heaven. So it represents a decisive separation of the opposites, of good and evil, and of heaven and earth. So that Yahweh now becomes identified with heaven and spirit, and Satan becomes identified with earth and matter. That's its one psychological reference. And there are other examples of this image. For instance, in the 12th chapter of Revelation, which we'll be reading in a few weeks, we there read, Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth he hath but a short time. That's an event that's supposed to happen at the end of the Christian eon. Then there's another reference to this same image in the 6th chapter of Genesis, where we read that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives. The sons of God came into the daughters of men and bore children to them. So here again we have the image of angels, angelic beings, called the sons of God, who are lured to earth by the daughters of men, and they are then called the fallen angels. And those fallen angels then teach humanity the arts and sciences. And we'll be reading Enoch next week, and there's a very lengthy description of this whole event in the book of Enoch, how the fallen angels teach man the arts and sciences. Now, in addition to the separatio factor in the image, the other major meaning is that it represents coagulatio. I talk about this image in considerable detail in the chapter on coagulatio in the anatomy of the psyche. But the idea of a descent from one level to another belongs to the symbol system of coagulatio. Another word for which is incarnation, you see. If something descends from an upper spiritual level to a lower realm, it takes on body as it descends. And that's the process of coagulatio. It's the descent of heavenly spiritual stuff that falls into matter. A Gnostic example of this image is Sophia, who out of a desirousness for the image that she sees reflected in the lower material realm, she falls into the embrace of matter and undergoes incarnation. So this is another image of coagulatio, of the process of a spiritual content undergoing embodiment, all of which has to do with ego development. In this symbolism, that which pertains to earth and body and matter, that refers to the ego. It's the ego then that is the incarnating agent and realizes or gives a body or real fleshly existence to psychic stuff that's just abstract until it's lived out concretely in the personal life of a particular ego. It's another interesting image that fits this same pattern is Lucifer's fall from heaven as described in Paradise Lost. I think it's probably significant that that particular classic was written in the 17th century, just as we've gotten into the final quarter of the Christian eon. Let me read you a few lines. Talking about Lucifer rebels against God, and he's kicked out of heaven. Just in the same fashion that the image of Satan is kicked out of heaven. He trusted to have equaled the Most High if he opposed, and with ambitious aim against the throne and monarchy of God, waged impious war in heaven, in battle proud, with vain attempt. Him the almighty power hurled headlong, flaming, from the ethereal sky, with hideous ruin and combustion down to bottomless perdition, there to dwell in adamantine chains and penal fire, who durst defy the omnipotent to arms. That's an image of ego development in kind of a grandiloquent form. But it is. Okay. Item number 2. This is found in Orphan Source from paragraph 651. Although Christ has complete confidence in his Father and even feels at one with him, he cannot help inserting the cautious petition and warning into the Lord's Prayer, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. God is asked not to entice us outright into doing evil, but rather to deliver us from it. The possibility that Yahweh, in spite of all the precautionary measures, and in spite of his express intention to become soon and born, might yet revert to his former ways, is not so remote that one need not keep one eye open for it. I thought this would give me an opportunity to say just a few words about the psychological implications of what we know as the Lord's Prayer. This comes from the 6th chapter of Matthew. And let me remind you of how it goes. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses or debts, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Now, that prayer that's been on the lips of millions and millions of individuals at the time of their greatest crises in their lives is laden with psychological impact. It's divided into 7 petitions. Young speaks of the 6th petition as the one saying, lead us not into temptation. And when one looks at it psychologically, you see right away that it is a formula for maintaining a connection between the ego and the self. Let me just illustrate that briefly with each of these 7 petitions. Number 1, hallowed be thy name. May thy name be sacred. That means then I must remember the transpersonal sacred dimension of life. That's what the ego is reminding itself. To remember that life isn't just secular, it's got the transpersonal dimension. Petition 2, thy kingdom come. The ego here is announcing that it recognizes that the rule of the self should prevail. Petition 3, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That means that the ego is saying, I'm going to live my life out of the same rule that you bring to your kingdom. Petition 4, give us our daily bread. The Vulgate says, give us our supersubstantial bread, which I think puts a nice angle onto it. And the idea there would be a petition or request for the inflow of nourishing images and meaning, which is the psychological bread. Petition 5, forgive us our trespasses or our debts. I prefer trespasses, although debts is the more common translation. I prefer it because it emphasizes the nature of the ego's sin against the self. Its characteristic sin is the inflation of identifying with the self, trespassing on the self's territory, in other words. And then petition number 6 is the one Young refers to, lead us not into temptation, because the fact is that the self in desire for total realization, total incarnation of its opposite nature leads one into evil as well as into good. So it's quite understandable that the petition would be there. And then petition number 7, deliver us from evil, protect us from the destructive dangers that you can't help but lead us into. All right, item number 3. This is brought up in paragraph 655, where we read, when Christ leaves the earthly stage, he will ask his Father to send his flock a counselor, the Paraclete, who will abide with them and in them forever. The counselor is the Holy Ghost, who will be sent from the Father. The Spirit of truth will teach the believers all things and guide them into all truth. According to this, Christ envisages a continuing realization of God in his children, and consequently in Christ's brothers and sisters in the Spirit. What Young is referring to there is comes from the 14th and 16th chapters of John. Let me read parts of those, because this image of the coming of the Paraclete is another very important psychological symbol for our understanding. Christ is here announcing that he's going to die shortly, and he's informing his disciples of that fact, and he's telling them don't be disturbed by that, because there's going to be a replacement. And here's what he says. This is from the Jerusalem translation. It is for your own good that I am going, because unless I go, the advocate, the Paraclete, will not come to you. But if I do go, I will send him to you. I shall ask the Father, and he will give you another advocate, Paraclete, to be with you forever. That Spirit of truth, whom the world can never receive, since it neither sees nor knows him. But you know him, because he is with you, he is in you. I will not leave you orphans. I will come back to you. In a short time the world will no longer see me, but you will see me, because I live and you will live. On that day you will understand that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. Now, what does this mean? It means that a literal, concrete embodiment of the self for a given person, which is the role that Christ was fulfilling for his disciples at the time. It means that concrete, literal embodiment must die in order for the ego-self relation to be internalized. the coming of the Paraclete, if we translate it into our familiar clinical experience, is an image of the resolution of the archetypal transference. So that it's at the conclusion of the analysis, when the resolution of the transference is the uppermost issue, the analyst communicates by whatever means succeed in stating exactly the same thing. I must go, and it's to your advantage that I go, because unless I go, your direct interrelation to the self cannot come. And in order to promote that inner direct relation to the self, one encourages active imagination in the later phases of analysis, because active imagination is the primary agency for the resolution of the transference. It's active imagination is the evocation of the Paraclete. Item number 4. This is referred to in paragraph 657 and the following one. And it concerns a really crucial theme. This is the theme of the continuing incarnation. And this idea is the core of the Jungian myth. God's incarnation in Christ requires continuation and completion, because Christ, owing to his virgin birth and his sinlessness, was not an empirical human being at all. As stated in the first chapter of St. John, he represented a light which, though it shone in the darkness, was not comprehended by the darkness. He remained outside and above mankind. Job, on the other hand, was an ordinary human being, and therefore the wrong done to him and through him to mankind can, according to divine justice, only be repaired by an incarnation of God in an empirical human being. This act of expiation is performed by the Paraclete. For just as man must suffer from God, so God must suffer from man. Otherwise there can be no reconciliation between them. Continuing direct operation of the Holy Ghost on those who are called to be God's children, in fact, implies a broadening process of incarnation. Christ, the Son, begotten by God, is the firstborn, who is succeeded by an ever-increasing number of younger brothers and sisters. This is the idea of the continuing incarnation. It's another expression through the process of individuation, but it's a more vivid, it's a more evocative, symbolic expression of the process of individuation, which has a kind of abstract quality to it. He's going to say some more about this theme later on in answer to Job, but I also want to read you what he says in the Kochnik letter, which I want to remind you is a major text of the new Jungian myth. It's It's the letter in English to Alfred Kochnig, written in June 30th, 1956, and it's found on page 312, FF of volume 2 of the letters. And at the end of that letter, he says this: the significance of man is enhanced by the incarnation. We have become participants of the divine life, and we have to assume a new responsibility. That is, the continuation of the divine self-realization, which expresses itself in the task of our individuation. Individuation does not only mean that man has become truly human, as distinct from animal, but that he is to become partially divine as well. This means practically that he becomes adult, responsible for his existence, knowing that he does not only depend on God, but that God also depends on man. Man's relation to God probably has to undergo certain important change. Instead of the propitiating praise to an unpredictable king, or the child's prayer to a loving father, the responsible living and fulfilling of the divine will in us be our form of worship of and commerce with God. His goodness means grace and light, and his dark side, a terrible temptation of power. Okay, item number 5. This is found in paragraph 658. The agonizing death of his son, Yavasin, was supposed to give him satisfaction for an affront he has suffered, and for this moral injury, in quotes, he would be inclined to take a terrible vengeance. Once more, we are appalled by the incongruous attitude of the world creator towards his creatures, who, to his chagrin, never behave according to his expectation. It is as if someone started a bacterial culture which turned out to be a failure. He might curse his luck, but he would never seek the reason for the failure in the bacilli and want to punish them morally for it. Rather, he would select a more suitable culture medium. That particular image of trying to understand God, the Creator's relation to man through man's creation of a bacterial culture has a very interesting parallel in a science fiction story by Stanislav Lem, who is a particularly fine science fiction author. He's written a story called Non Serviam, which is Latin meaning I may not serve. And in this story, a scientist creates a computer world in which conscious beings exist within a computer context, what he called personoids. And these entities, as they gain consciousness, begin to indulge in metaphysical speculations about the nature of their creator. And they divide up into various factions. The two chief factions were the godlies and the ungodlies. The question they had was their Creator want them to believe in him, and yet he punished them if they don't believe in him. And it became a dispute. Dispute developed between the two. One side assumed that the Creator God requires reverence, love, and devotion. And in order to win one's salvation, one must be grateful to the Maker for creating him, and one must do one's best to serve God. The other side thought that not at all. That if we assume that God is just and omniscient, nothing is due him at all, because a God who craves such feelings of being loved and served must first of all assure his creatures that he actually exists. And he can't require them to just rely on speculations about his existence. And so, if he's almighty, he could have provided certainty. And since he did not provide it, if he exists, he must not have thought it necessary. And if he's not almighty, would he be deserving of such feelings of service anyway? So that particular view said, no, we're not obliged to serve this God who probably doesn't exist anyway. But the fact that he doesn't demonstrate his existence to us means we don't have to. And then the scientist who's been listening in on all this realized they're talking about him. And he said that he thought this last reasoning seemed incontrovertible to him. I'm the creator, and I did produce that world with the aid of Adonai 9 computer program. And the fact is, I have not communicated to them either about my existence or anything about my existence. And they arrived at that idea only by inference. And the fact is, I do not at all feel myself entitled to demand of them any particular privileges, love, gratitude, or even services. Even though I'm omnipotent in regard to their world, I can pull the plug on them any day. But I don't even love them, actually. You see, what's so interesting to me about this, I'm going into it, is it's a datum illustrating an issue that the modern mind is engaged with. In science fiction, which is right on the margin of science, it's where imagination and science meet. It's a place where the collective unconscious has a chance to speak to the modern world, and we discover in stories of this sort how the very matter that Jung is dealing with on a completely different level of much greater depth, is also engaging the collective psyche. So I wanted to illustrate that. If you're interested, this comes from the collection of Lem's science fiction stories entitled A Perfect Vacuum, title of the book. Next, item number 6 comes from paragraph 659. fact that Christian ethics leads to conversions of duty speaks in its favor. By engendering insoluble conflicts and consequently an afflictio animi, it brings man nearer to a knowledge of God. All opposites are of God. Therefore man must bend to this burden, and in so doing he finds that God, in his oppositeness, has taken possession of him, incarnated himself in him. He becomes a vessel filled with divine conflict. I just wanted to draw your attention to that stunning statement because it concerns a basic issue that we're dealing with all the time, both in ourselves and in our patients, the idea of the opposites. And Jung is emphasizing here the fact that the experience of the conflict of the opposites is an experience of the incarnation of God, who is being incarnated in his oppositeness, which, needless to say, gives one a whole new level of understanding to the experience of conflict. Okay, item number 7 comes from paragraph 660. Here's a deep one. Because the imago Dei pervades the whole human sphere and makes mankind its involuntary exponent, it is just possible that the 400-year-old schism in the church and the present division of the political world into two hostile camps are both expressions of the unrecognized polarity of the dominant archetype. The basic axiom here is the imago Dei pervades the whole human sphere and makes mankind its involuntary exponent. I would like a slightly different translation, better than that. The difference hinges on the translation of the verb darstellen. And I would prefer this translation for that sentence. The imago Dei pervades the whole human sphere and is involuntarily represented by mankind. You can decide for yourselves whether you think that's a significant difference or not, but it's a little clearer to me anyway. I hope you realize what this sentence implies. I want to say a little bit about what I think it implies. You remember I've mentioned before that we can think of the collective unconscious like a very subtle fluid pervading the universe, but being especially concentrated in the psyche of humanity. This corresponds to the image of the alchemical elixir pomenins, one of the meanings of which is it's a fluid that permeates everything. It can seep its way into everything. That's the word that one uses here. So the imago Dei pervades the whole human sphere. This God image, the imago Dei, which is the central archetype of the collective unconscious, then, and therefore is the central agent and the creative authority that determines the individual functioning of all individuals and all organic groupings of individuals. The God image, as the central archetype of the collective unconscious, is the central agent and creative authority that determines the functioning of all individuals and all organic groupings of individuals. Now, by organic groupings, I mean all families, tribes, factions, parties, religions, nations, all groupings, small or large, which are unified by mutual identification with an origin, a cause, or a creed. And these origins, causes, and creeds will be expressions of the God image that is the operative central agent within the group psyche of that particular group. So what that means then is that the conflicts that take place between different nations and different creeds or different factions of all kinds, that in such conflicts, each side will be acting out of its own commitment to its own version of the God image. Meaning then that the conflict between two factions of any kind is a conflict within the God image itself. I hope you will follow that. If not, we'll go further in the discussion period. But this is my effort to elaborate what is condensed in this one sentence, where Jung says the imago Dei pervades the whole human sphere and is involuntarily represented by mankind. As that becomes visible to you, it changes your whole understanding of the functioning of the collective psyche of humanity and the way it manifests itself politically and religiously and factionally in all its various aspects. Okay.